I always believed the most powerful stories were the ones that revealed themselves slowly, like bruises under pale skin, darkening with time until the truth couldn't be ignored. But I was wrong. Some stories don't reveal. They perform. They wear costumes. And for a decade, I was both the author and the audience of a lie so elaborate, even my own daughter played her part. My name is Noah Sterling. I write screenplays that win awards but can't fix the people I love. For 10 years, I've been married to Eliza, charismatic, brilliant, beloved by everyone but herself. And then there's Sophie, our daughter, bright, imaginative, too intuitive for a child. They were my world, my greatest narrative, or so I thought. 3 months ago, I finished my most ambitious script, a psychological thriller about deception in a perfect family. It was raw, personal, too close to home, but I didn't care. Writing it nearly destroyed me, but it also gave me something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. The night I typed fade out, I exhaled like I had been holding my breath since the day I said, I do. Eliza didn't even read it. She poured herself a second glass of red wine and said, "Congrats, babe," without looking up from her phone. Sophie just gave me a tired smile, the kind that seemed too mature for her 12-year-old face. Like she knew something I didn't. Like she was waiting for a cue in a play I hadn't realized we were staging. It was a week later that I heard her say it. I was in the hallway just outside her bedroom. Eliza had tucked her in, something she rarely did unless she was overcompensating. I was about to push the door open to kiss Sophie goodnight when I heard her voice low and conspiratorial. "We don't have to act for Dad anymore." I froze. My hand was still on the doorknob, but my grip had turned to ice. The sentence wrapped around my brain like barbed wire. I stepped back, silent, not breathing. I waited for more. Nothing. Just silence. Then a soft, "good night" from Eliza and her retreating footsteps. I should have barged in, asked what she meant. I demanded an answer, but I didn't. I went back to my office, sat in the dark, and stared at the script I had just finished. Was it fiction, or had I written my confession without realizing it? The next morning, Sophie was all smiles. Eliza kissed me like always, absent, rehearsed, brief. And I began to wonder, how long have they been pretending? What role had I unknowingly been playing? There's a difference between being lied to and being part of a performance. Lies can be revealed. But a performance? That means everyone around you agreed on a script you were never handed. And now, finally, I want to see the real ending, even if I have to rewrite every line myself. The next morning, I started observing them, like characters I hadn't quite understood until the second act. Sophie moved through the house too carefully. At breakfast, she over-explained things: her homework, the bus schedule, how she loved her art teacher. Her words felt scripted, like she was afraid of missing a cue. Eliza, meanwhile, oscillated between performative affection and distracted detachment. She'd ask about my script, but never listen to the answers. Her eyes were always somewhere else, checking her phone, checking Sophie, checking the exits. I stopped answering. Instead, I started watching. The first layer peeled back easily. Eliza had two phones, one for work, one she kept face down on her nightstand. I'd never questioned it. She was a producer, constantly networking. But late one night, when she fell asleep on the couch with a wine glass in her hand, I finally picked it up. No lock. What I saw didn't surprise me. It enraged me. Messages from someone named A, casual at first, then increasingly personal. There were photos, hotel rooms, a table set for two, a man's wristwatch, and audio messages. She called him Ash. Not Ashley, Ash. Short, intimate, private. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about infidelity. If it were, I might have felt anger. But this was something darker, colder, strategic. Eliza wasn't just cheating. She was building an alternate life. One where I didn't exist, except maybe as an obstacle. That's when I remembered the subtle changes over the past year. Her pushing me to sell the house, hinting I should take a sabbatical from writing, encouraging me to recharge. She called it love, support, but now it looked like calculated extraction. Strip away my career, isolate me, then remove me. The second layer of betrayal cut deeper. Sophie. One afternoon, I picked her up early from school, something Eliza usually did. I told the school it was a surprise. Sophie looked confused, then nervous. "Does Mom know?" she asked, her eyes darting to the parking lot. "She will," I said, buckling her in. "I missed you." She didn't smile. We drove in silence. At a red light, I glanced at her. She was holding her sketchbook tight to her chest. "What are you drawing?" I asked gently. "Nothing." "Sophie." She opened it slowly. The pages were filled with drawings of our house. But in each one, I was missing. Just Eliza and her. Sometimes a tall, shadowy figure stood in my place. "Who's that?" I asked, trying not to sound shaken. She shrugged. "Just someone. Mom says he's helping us." Helping us? That phrase haunted me. When we got home, I went into the garage, an area I hadn't really touched in months. I needed to find the boxes Eliza had insisted we declutter. Most of them were mine. Old scripts, family photos, journals. But one box was different, labeled with my name, but packed with things I never meant to throw away. Bank documents, property titles, insurance policies, all stacked meticulously, too meticulous. She was building a case, and I realized then this wasn't an affair. It was a replacement. She was phasing me out, like a character whose arc was complete. All she needed was a final scene, something dramatic, something irreversible. Maybe she even wanted me to snap, to confront her, to hit her, something she could document, something that could make the courts nod in sympathy as they handed over custody and assets. But I didn't give her a scene. I gave her silence, and I started rewriting the script, one that would show them both I was still the author of this story. I began visiting places she wouldn't expect: a lawyer, a child psychologist, a private investigator. I needed to understand how long the performance had run and who had directed it. The PI delivered a folder 2 weeks later. Inside were photos. Ash was real, a finance consultant, widowed, divorced, depending on which timeline you believed. He and Eliza had been seeing each other for nearly a year. They had a shared lease on an apartment uptown. She'd listed it as a studio space on our tax returns. There were receipts, bank transfers, even emails where she referred to me in the past tense. "Noah's in a dark place. I think he's finally ready to let go." Let go of what? My family, my daughter, my own damn life. But here's the worst part. Sophie had been spending weekends there. She called it Mom's friend's place, and I never questioned it. And in one photo, she was smiling next to Ash, like he was her real father. Layer 3. There's no betrayal more complete than being replaced in the eyes of your child. I thought back to her drawings. The missing father, the silent shadow. That's what I had become. I couldn't yell. I couldn't threaten. That's what they wanted. I had to unspool the thread slowly, carefully, intelligently. I told Eliza I was taking time off, that I wanted to heal, that I was tired. She didn't question it. She smiled, relieved. I moved into the guest room. She said it was a good idea. For space. Sophie watched it all unfold with glassy eyes. I wanted to ask her what she thought was happening, but I didn't want to force her into pretending. Not yet. I started leaving clues like screenwriting notes. I'd leave a marked-up copy of my latest script on the kitchen counter. A scene where a wife betrays her husband. A daughter lies. A man finds clarity, then revenge. Eliza didn't say a word about it, but I saw her reading it. Twice. That's when I knew. She understood what I was doing, and she was scared. And not of what I would do, but of what I had already begun, because I wasn't breaking. I was planning. The morning I recorded them, the silence in the house was a living thing. I'd left a small device, one of those wireless mics used in film production, tucked behind the fruit bowl on the kitchen island. It blended in. I made sure of it. The camera was hidden in a coffee mug I custom designed for my last screenplay. Ironically, it had "Truth Reveals Itself" printed on the side. They thought I was out at a screenwriting retreat. That's what I told them. A friend owed me a favor. I had GPS data, receipts, a check-in confirmation from a cabin 3 hours away. But I was close enough to watch them in real time from my car. parked just a block away. At 9:03 a.m., Sophie entered the kitchen in her pajamas. She was humming. At 9:07, Eliza appeared, phone in hand. She didn't kiss her daughter. She didn't even look at her for a long moment. "Dad's gone?" Sophie asked. "Yeah," Eliza said, already scrolling. Then came the moment that punched my ribs from the inside. Sophie poured cereal and casually said, "So, we don't have to act for Dad anymore?" Eliza laughed, that laugh. "Not unless he comes back early. You were good, by the way. Better than I expected." Sophie smiled. "You said I'd be a good actress. You will be. Just keep playing your part for a little longer, okay?" "Okay." And then Eliza added something I'll never forget. "Soon we'll be able to live like we're supposed to. You, me, and Ash." That was when I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was emotional surgery. They were trying to extract me like a tumor, slowly, methodically, without making the patient scream. But they'd miscalculated one thing. Tumors don't plan. I do. I changed after that. Not instantly. But the transformation began somewhere beneath the skin. Subtle at first. I started working out again, not to look good, but to regain discipline. I ran in the early hours, pushing my lungs to punish me. I went back to journaling, not just about the script or the lies, but about who I had become over the years. I cataloged every moment I let Eliza talk over me. Every time I excused her silence, every time I gaslit myself into believing her betrayal was my fault. And then I began writing, not just the screenplay, but something deeper, a mirror of our life, dressed up in fictional metaphors, a husband betrayed, a daughter caught in the illusion, a wife who weaponized affection and made deception feel like routine. And at the center of it all, a twist, one no one saw coming. I began laying out the end game. But for it to work, I needed three things: leverage, exposure, and time. Leverage came first. With the help of a forensic accountant, I uncovered financial irregularities. Eliza had been rerouting funds through joint accounts into what she labeled studio expenses. But she never had a studio. Those funds, nearly $120,000, were quietly being invested into Ash's real estate development company. Paper trails can vanish, but screenwriters? We archive everything. I had PDF exports of every transaction, time-stamped, backed up in 3 places. Exposure was next. I reached out to a family law specialist, Ruth Walters. She had a reputation for brutal clarity and zero tolerance for emotional manipulation. I didn't paint myself as a victim. I presented facts, audio recordings, documents. And I showed her my screenplay draft, not for legal use, but as a psychological profile of my situation. She told me something I hadn't dared believe. "If you want custody, you can get it. But my daughter, she's been coached, but it's reversible. If you still want to be her father, you have to act now, not emotionally, strategically." I did. Time was the trickiest part, because Eliza sensed something was shifting. She started checking on me more, asking odd questions. "Are you feeling okay? You've been distant." "Just reflecting," I'd say. She didn't like that answer. She began planting small landmines, accusations of being withdrawn, unstable. She texted her sister about my mental health, probably to create a breadcrumb trail. She knew if she played the long game right, she could claim I was unfit. But I stayed calm, polite, predictable. She hated it. Then came the night Sophie came into my room unprompted. I was rereading old pages of my new script when she knocked. "Dad?" Her voice was hesitant, the way you speak to someone you're not sure you recognize anymore. "Yeah?" She closed the door behind her. "Are you mad at me?" I didn't respond right away. I looked at her, not like a father, like a man who had been lied to, trained to ignore the truths his instincts screamed at him. "No," I said finally, "but I think you're scared." Her eyes filled. "She said it would just be for a little while," she whispered. "She said if I acted like I was sad when you were around, it would make it easier." "Easier for what?" She didn't say. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she asked, "Are you going away?" "Do you want me to?" "No." That's when I knew. Sophie wasn't lost, just misdirected. A week later, I invited Eliza and Sophie to dinner. I said I wanted to reconnect, that I'd had a breakthrough with my script. I cooked. I lit candles. I even made Eliza's favorite wine reduction sauce. She didn't know it, but I recorded the whole thing. Halfway through dinner, I steered the conversation. You remember that cabin I stayed at? She nodded. The retreat. Of course. There was no retreat. I was parked 1 block away. Silence. And I heard everything. Eliza froze. Sophie dropped her fork. What are you talking about? Eliza said, already faking offense. I slid the phone across the table and pressed play. Her voice. Sophie's voice. Everything. The performance collapsed in real time. Sophie gasped. You recorded us? I looked at her calm. Because I needed to know the truth, not what I was told, not what I was made to believe, but what actually existed behind my back. Eliza stood. This is illegal. You've completely lost it. Number, I've just remembered who I am. That night I filed for full custody. I submitted everything to the court. Financial records, recordings, therapy recommendations from Ruth's team, Sophie's drawings, even school reports noting her behavioral changes. And I finished the screenplay. I renamed it Ghost Father. In the weeks that followed, Eliza fought back. She hired PR consultants, tried to paint me as an obsessive recluse, using my writing against me. But here's the thing about being underestimated for years. You learn how to weaponize silence. You learn how to let people destroy themselves while smiling politely. She showed up to court armed with accusations. I showed up with receipts. And just before the final hearing, as we sat in the waiting area, Eliza leaned in and whispered, You'll ruin Sophie's life for revenge? No, I said. You already did that. I'm just putting the story back in her hands. The courtroom was colder than I imagined. Not physically, emotionally. Like it had absorbed all the lies ever spoken inside it and wore them like a second skin. Eliza sat across from me at the polished oak table, her posture impeccable, her outfit carefully curated to signal concerned but composed. Her lawyer leaned close to whisper tactics, her hands clasped as if in prayer. A performance, a well-rehearsed one, and she was good. But I'd spent 2 decades writing award-winning characters. I knew the difference between authenticity and artifice. And across the aisle, my daughter. Sophie looked smaller than I remembered, like her spirit had shrunk, not her body. Her eyes scanned the room, pausing on me only briefly before dropping to her lap. I felt something inside me buckle, then harden. Judge Callahan entered, stern, experienced, and infamous for her zero-tolerance approach to emotional manipulation in custody hearings. The kind of judge who saw through optics and demanded substance. We began. Eliza's attorney went first. She opened with concern for Sophie's emotional well-being and painted me as volatile, emotionally erratic, prone to obsession, especially with his writing. The phrase narcissistic control fantasies was dropped like a grenade. They submitted excerpts from my screenplay. They quoted my own words back to me. The protagonist watches them lie with such ease, he starts to doubt the shape of truth itself. He wrote this during his supposed healing, the attorney said, but it reads like a manifesto. I didn't flinch. I let them think I was cornered, because this wasn't the real trial. That came next. When it was my turn, I didn't call myself to the stand. I called Sophie. The courtroom murmured. Eliza's lawyer objected. Judge Callahan asked one question. Does the child understand the gravity of her statements? I responded calmly. Your Honor, my daughter is smart, too smart. She's been made to act like a child in distress when she's really a child in disguise. The judge turned to Sophie and asked, Do you want to speak? Sophie looked at me, really looked at me. Then she nodded. She walked to the stand, small shoulders squared. The bailiff swore her in. She gripped the microphone like it might bite. Tell us, I began gently, what's been happening at home? Sophie hesitated. Eliza shot her a glance, sharp, almost imperceptible. But Sophie saw it, and that's when something clicked. My mom said it would help you let go, she whispered. Help me let go of what? I asked, though I already knew. She said if I acted sad around you, you'd stop trying, that you'd leave. The room held its breath. And did you want me to leave? I asked. Tears formed. No. What did she promise you? Sophie's lips trembled. She said we'd move to Ash's place with a pool, that I could get a dog, that we'd be happier. Do you feel happy? She looked down. I miss you when you're not home. I didn't cry. I couldn't. This was chess, not therapy. Eliza stood up suddenly. She's confused. She's a child. You're manipulating her. Enough, Judge Callahan snapped. Sit down, Mrs. Langley. The room fell silent again. Then I did something no one expected. I submitted the final version of Ghostfather as evidence. Elaborate, the judge said. I nodded. It's not just a screenplay. It's a psychological transcript. Names changed, but facts intact, embedded in metaphor. Every scene is drawn from dated entries, audio logs, and financial reports. You'll find footnotes in the appendix cross-referencing each element. Eliza's lawyer protested. Your Honor, this is a fictional work. No, I interrupted. It's a confession, just not mine. Judge Callahan skimmed it, then looked at Eliza. Is there anything you'd like to say before I rule? Eliza hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have a script. I was protecting my daughter. He's obsessive. He records everything. Who does that? I do, I said quietly. Writers do. Survivors do. And fathers who are being erased one lie at a time definitely do. Sophie stepped down from the stand and walked toward me, slowly, then faster. And then she hugged me. A full body, no hesitation. I remember you hug. Eliza called out, Sophie, but the judge had seen enough. I'm awarding full legal and physical custody to Mr. Langley, she declared. Eliza gasped. I'll order a psychological evaluation to determine visitation schedules, contingent on parental fitness. The court is adjourned. The gavel dropped like thunder. Outside, the sky had never looked bluer. Sophie and I walked in silence for a bit. The media would swarm soon. Eliza would retaliate in interviews. But I had built the one thing she could never destroy again, truth that held up in court and in my daughter's heart. Sophie squeezed my hand. You wrote all of that? Every word, even the sad parts, especially the sad parts. She looked up at me. Then, can I help you write the ending? I smiled, the real kind. You just did. I moved back into the house a week after the custody ruling. Not the old one Eliza and I shared, the one I bought just for Sophie and me. A clean slate with squeaky floors and sun-washed windows. The kind of place where nothing whispered lies from the walls. The first night I stood outside her bedroom door listening. She was humming, a real tune, not rehearsed. I tapped lightly. Can I come in? Yeah. Her room was already filled with life. Books, art supplies, the pillow I gave her when she was 5. She sat cross-legged on the bed, sketching in a worn-out notebook. I'm working on the dog designs, she said. I want one that looks like it could talk. I laughed softly. Of course you do. She smiled, but then the air turned more still, like we both sensed something deeper needed naming. Do you believe me? She asked quietly. I sat beside her, careful not to crowd her. Sophie, the truth isn't something I demand from you. It's something you get to grow into. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be free. She stared at the sketch in her lap. It felt like pretending made everything less scary. I didn't want to lose either of you. I nodded. You weren't pretending, sweetheart. You were surviving. There's a difference. Tears welled in her eyes. She said you'd stop loving me if you knew. Then she doesn't know what love really is. She leaned into me. We stayed like that until she fell asleep. And I didn't write that night. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to. The media circus around Eliza's fall was more savage than I expected. Her publisher pulled the option on her upcoming memoir. Ash, Mr. Third Act Savior, gave one public statement denying any involvement in the manipulation, then ghosted. Classic. She tried to rebuild. podcasts, tearful Instagram videos, misunderstood mother narratives. I said nothing. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't have to. She lived off performance. I was finally living off the truth. Weeks turned into months. Sophie settled into her new school, and I taught a screenwriting workshop at the community college. Nothing glamorous, but I like seeing raw, hungry creatives try to shape meaning from mess. One night I was cleaning up papers when Sophie knocked on my study door, holding something behind her back. "I finished it," she said. "Finished what?" She handed me a notebook. It was bound with colored thread, dog-eared at the corners. On the front, "Ghost Daughter," co-written by Sophie and Dad. My throat tightened as I flipped through. Drawings, snippets of scenes, dialogue we'd improvised in the car. Some parts were silly, some shattering. Page 46 stopped me cold. It was a scene between a father and daughter, mirroring a memory I never thought she'd kept. The day I found her hiding under the stairs after Eliza and I fought. She hadn't spoken then. But in her script, she gave that version of herself words. "Are you leaving?" Number I just forgot how to stay for a while. I looked up. "You remembered that?" She nodded. "You looked so tired, like even your voice was holding its breath." "Did you think I'd leave?" She hesitated. "I hoped you'd stay just long enough to see I was still here." That's when I realized. All those years I was writing to survive her mother, I missed the co-author who was always beside me, waiting, absorbing, imagining. My daughter. My daughter had been keeping our story safe. A month later, I got a letter, thick envelope, gold seal, studio-branded paper. They wanted to buy Ghostfather, not an option. Buy, full adaptation rights, green-lighted, with me attached as co-writer and executive consultant. Apparently, the judge had passed it to her nephew, a junior executive. "One of the most daring psychological portraits of paternal love we've seen in years," he wrote. "Authentic, dangerous, devastating." I didn't feel triumph. I felt at peace. I called Sophie into the kitchen, slid the letter toward her. "We did it," I said. Her eyes widened. "Wait, us? You think I'm adapting this without my co-writer?" Her mouth dropped open. "Can we write the ending together?" she asked. I looked at her. "We already are." Eliza called once, just once. No lawyers, no threats, just her voice, thinner now, like her confidence had been shaved to its bone. "I didn't think you'd actually win," she said. "You didn't think I'd survive." Silence, and then, "I think I hate you because you believed in something longer than I could pretend to." I didn't offer forgiveness, but I offered clarity. "You didn't lose to me, Eliza. You lost to the version of yourself you were pretending to be." She hung up, and that was enough. On the night of the premiere, Sophie and I walked the carpet, not as stars, as story keepers. Interviewers asked about trauma, recovery, and revenge. We talked about narrative healing. Someone asked, "What was the hardest part to write?" Sophie looked at me and said, "The part where he forgot he was the hero." The cameras clicked, the lights flashed, but all I could see was her, my daughter, my co-writer, my ending and my beginning. I used to think pain had to be turned into art to mean something. Now I know, sometimes it just needs to be understood. And if you're lucky, rewritten. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.